boxing here on this Monday. Y'all make sure to hit that like button as y'all come in. And there it is. I just put it in the chat. Y'all make sure to hit that like button. It is Monday. It's Lundi Gras, what we call Lundi Gras down here in South Louisiana. It's the day before Mardi Gras, and this is a holiday for South Louisiana. This whole week, holiday. So kids are out of school, Mardi Gras holiday. You guys might have a spring holiday, something like that. We have Mardi Gras week, and this is Mardi Gras week. So you have people outside of South Louisiana probably don't know this. The culture is Mardi Gras is the season. It starts on King's Day, and it lasts a couple months, and you have parades going throughout the season, and this is when it really ramps up. So you have holiday week this week, and this is what's called Lundi Gras. It's the Monday, the day before Mardi Gras, and Mardi Gras coincides with Ash Wednesday. You party on Tuesday, on Fat Tuesday, you get fat, and then you get your ashes on Wednesday. That's just how we roll in South Louisiana. Hit that like button. Salute to Anthony Sanchez and salute to Serge. Y'all make sure to leave those comments in the comment section. Get those comments up and hit that like button as you come in as well. So we got a lot to talk about, and I'm going to try to get to as much of it as possible in as coherent of a manner and clean as I possibly can, and concisely as I possibly can, because just a lot of stuff breaking, and there will be a lot of shakeups going down the next couple weeks. I'm just going to advise you guys that right now is, if you like chaos, if you like shakeups, the next couple of weeks in the boxing world should be for you. I'm just going to tell you that from stuff that I'm hearing. So I think you'll enjoy the next couple weeks if that's what you like. Let me get to this real quick. Appreciate this, Nando. Always appreciate you rolling through, and appreciate the $4.99 super chat. Saludos, Calix, boxing homies. Feliz Mardi Gras. Feliz Mardi Gras. There we go. Happy Lundi Gras to everybody. And tomorrow, I'll be here tomorrow. I can tell you that. I'll be here tomorrow. And happy Fat Tuesday, a day ahead of time for everybody out there. Teofimo Lopez, Jermaine Ortiz. Let's start there. That whole fiasco Thursday night, because I haven't been on since then. I haven't been able to give my 2 cents on that since then. And it's really disappointing, man. It was a very, very, very disappointing night. Just in every way possible. It was just such a disappointing night. It reminded me all over again of Shakur Stevenson, De Los Santos. But even that night, though, you had good things happening. You had Navarrete versus Conceição, which was a hell of a fight. One of the best fights of the year, right? So at least you had that to lighten the mood. But this was just bad. This was ugly. And it was disappointing because I very much wanted Teofimo to show out on Thursday night. I very much wanted Teofimo to make that statement to say, no. The Teofimo that you saw against Cambosos, that you saw against Sandor, that's not the real Teofimo. And I'm locked in now. And we're going to put things together consistently. We talked about leading up to the fight that we need to see consistency from Teofimo. We already know he can put on great performances against great fighters. We've seen that against Lomachenko and Josh Taylor. We've talked about how he fights up and down to level of competition, and it's deeper than that now. And that's what we're going to get into in this show. It's deeper than just that. We were making that out too. It's just Teofimo, he's going to fight up to the great fights, and you just got to get him in great fights against great fighters, and he's going to fight down a level of competition. It's deeper than that, fellas. It's deeper than that. It's stylistic. There's some stylistic issues with him with certain styles of fighters as well. And we talked about the separation. The truly great fighters or athletes, legendary athletes, they separate themselves, like the all-time athletes separate themselves from great athletes of just their era, right? And then you have further separation. It goes down the line, right? There's levels to it. Inoue and Bud are separating themselves from their peers currently, right? And then you got that next level of guys, and then you got that next level of guys. We want to see what level Teofimo was on. Is he on that second level? Is he getting into nipping at that top level? Where is he? And in order to do that, you have to have separation from fighters. You have to put on great performances consistently, but you also need to show up when, look, you're facing a bad team and you're in the NBA. There's not too many people in the arena. You still have to show up. You still have to show up consistently. That's what the greats do. Michael Jordan did that. Kobe Bryant did that. There was once upon a time when LeBron James and Carmelo Anthony come out in the same draft, and you had people like the Michael Wilbons of the world saying Carmelo Anthony's better than LeBron James. But over time, you saw that separation. I brought up Michael Jordan, Dominique Wilkins. Similar conversations were being had in the 80s to where Dominique Wilkins is averaging 30 or close to 30 per game. He's playing 80 games per year. He's doing a lot of the same things Michael Jordan is doing, but not as often as Michael Jordan is doing. And then in the 90s, you see that clear separation where Michael Jordan's career takes off and then Dominique Wilkins plateaus and goes down. What we want to see from Teofimo is he can consistently show up, because despite what the Wizards of Smart are out there telling you, despite what the new age boxing fan is telling you, you can no longer afford to have bad performances. You can't. In the olden days, you were able to do that. We'll talk about a fighter right now, today in this show, who is suing his promoter currently because his promoter promised him a certain amount of dates, a certain amount of fights per year, and they did not deliver on that. Fighters are being seen, even guys not on the top level, mid-level guys fighting once or twice per year. You have prospects now fighting 3 or 4 times per year. For the love of God, you can no longer in this market, in this current generation of boxing, afford off nights, fellas. You can't do it. You can't do it. You cannot have these off nights. And you can't have multiples of them. And now what we have is Teofimo and Shakur Stevenson. It's what we talk about as far as inflation, right? And we talked about hoflation. It's not just that things are more expensive. It's not that, and these fighters should be more accessible, but they're less accessible. You got social media. You got all ways to promote yourselves, and they're less accessible now. Less accessible. It costs more money to see these guys. But at the same time, the product has been devalued and has been done right in front of your face without you even really noticing it. Lumber has been devalued. I know that because I'm building a house. I gave this example of how lumber has been devalued. It used to be a time where they cultivated these trees and these lumbers on these tree farms. Now they just cut them out and spit them out. Cut them down and spit them out. And they're charging you more for it. And it's the same with boxing. It's the same with, I watched the NBA. I'm watching the game Friday night, I believe it was, Saturday night with my son. He's a Pelicans fan. We're down here in South Louisiana. I'm watching the Pelicans give up 87 points in the first half alone against the LA Lakers. And I'm watching this, and I'm actually texting people that I grew up playing basketball with and saying, you have to see this. You have to see how awful and unrecognizable this is. Nobody is touching nobody. They're allowing these dudes to run through the lane and lay it up and dunk on them. 87 points in the first half they gave up. I felt like I was watching an all-star game. It's becoming unrecognizable. The product, and these fighters cannot afford off nights because we don't see them enough. And we have to pay more for them. So who in the hell is going to become emotionally invested in these guys? So I'm watching Teofimo. I'm watching Shakur against De Los Santos, both Thursday night fights. Bob Arum is serving these guys up to spike the ball against opponents that are negative fighters. But still, if you're that great to where they're promoting you to be these great of fighters, Thursday night before Grand Prix, Thursday night before Super Bowl, you should be able to spike that ball, and they can't do it. They can't do it. And this isn't the first time this has happened, fellas. Nakathila. I remember getting on here after the Nakathila fight and just tearing Shakur Stevenson up for that performance. And you have Shakur Stevenson fans saying, well, he won every round. He won every round, but who in the hell is going to want to watch that? And then he does it again against De Los Santos. We did it with one arm. Well, he shouldn't have fought. I don't know what to tell you. If that's what you're going to give people, you shouldn't have fought. You would have done better not fighting at all. And then I'm watching Teofimo again on Thursday night, and I'm saying, going in, I'm saying, I think he's going to show out tonight. I just get that feeling. And my instincts were wrong. Dead wrong. Dead wrong. I'm always transparent here. When I'm wrong, dead wrong. The trend continued, and it was a clear trend coming in. And there are more trends than that. This is the alarming part. Is there more trends than just he fights up and down to level of competition? There's more trends than that. But that trend was right, and it continued. Is the guy who fought Sandor showed up again. The guy who fought Camboso showed up again. And the microcosm of it is when you hear him talk. And you hope that it doesn't bleed into the ring, right? The outside stuff, outside the ring stuff doesn't bleed inside the ring, and it does. And you watch this guy after the fight, humans, calm down. And he's telling these dudes to S his D. S my D. And I hear that, I'm like, even his dad. And when his dad is the voice of reason, you know you're way off. S my D? He's telling this to a paid audience. He's telling this to the people watching the fight on TV. S my D? And then a minute later saying praise Jesus? And that's the microcosm of the up and down of this guy. Just that 1 minute right there tells you who he is. I'm over here. 1 minute later, I'm over here. I love Jesus, but guess what? S my D. It's like, what is happening? What is happening? What is this? As long as it doesn't bleed into the ring and it's just a circus act outside, that's fine. But once it bleeds into the ring, you watch him fight Josh Taylor and it's like, all right. But then retirement. And then, what was it? 8, 9, 10 months of inactivity. And then he shows up and does this. And you watch him and he can't cut off the ring. I know Jermaine Ortiz is fighting super negative. And by the way, we're about to talk about that and how I never want to see Jermaine Ortiz on my TV ever again. But that's the levels we talk about. Naoya Inoue fights Paul Butler. Similar level of opposition. Paul Butler is literally running around the ring, and Inoue finds a way to constantly cut him off, and stop him. He still finds a way to do it. That's the levels. That's the levels we talk about. Right? Is certain guys figure out a way to do it. And Inoue may have an off night. Canelo may have an off night. But the thing about that is his track record is, you're going to see those guys back in May, September. Inoue wants to fight May, September, and December this year. So those guys, you can afford those guys an off night. Their history tells you they're going to show up again. And they're likely going to look good in that fight. But with the Teofimos, with the Shakurs, this new age of fighter that feels entitled to things and hasn't done anything to the level that these other fighters above them have done, and they feel like they're entitled to things that those fighters are entitled to, it's not going to work. I asked D-Style last week, I was like, center rises for this fight are $104. So why is this guy not reaching the market? Why is he not reaching the market? Why was he in the small theater at Madison Square Garden? Why was he there? Why wasn't he in the big theater? This guy's talented. He seems to be marketable other than his meltdowns. Why is it not delivering? And you saw it on Thursday night. It's the constant inconsistency. ESPN talked about it before the fight, the roller coaster of this guy's career. He's going to be too up and down. He's going to be too inconsistent. And on top of that, these guys feel like they're above entertaining people. That's a key part. Key part of that is you see Teofimo after the fight and people are booing him and voicing their displeasure. Hey, I paid money to get into this fight. You're supposed to deliver. And he says, S my D. Shakur Stevenson, similar stuff after the De Los Santos fight. Similar stuff after the Nakathila fight. And Shakur comes to the market and he's testing free agency and he's wondering why Top Rank's only offering him 15 mil over 5 fights. And I'm sure he's putting out feelers and he's seeing the market. He's seeing that PBC, what's about to happen with them. And more on that today, possibly we'll start to get into that. And he sees a market that's drying up. And he's wondering, why? Look, I'm a great fighter. I'm beating these guys. Why am I not? And they'll blame all kind of outside things, but it's them. You can't put on performances when you're a twice a year per year fighter if we're lucky this early in your career. You cannot afford to put on performances like Nakathila and De Los Santos. The market is going to turn that off. And another thing here, fellas, is it aggravates the hell out of me. People talk about what a great platform ESPN is for boxing. And for the most part, they're right. But if you're putting these fights on at midnight Eastern, the ring walks are close to midnight Eastern, how many people are you actually getting to? If 75% of America lives Central Time Zone and East, how many people are actually watching these fights and actually are seeing these fights? So Teofimo walks to the ring close to midnight Eastern. It's around 11 o'clock my time. And for the people who are somehow still awake, he puts them to sleep. And Jermaine Ortiz, for his part in this, he's obviously an athlete. And that's what I saw on Thursday night. I saw two great athletes because boxers are the best athletes in the world. And these guys are clearly great athletes. But great boxers, I don't really see it. Particularly Jermaine Ortiz. Jermaine Ortiz feels like he's not as confident in his boxing ability and his willingness to stay in the pocket and put his chin out there and allow his opponent to hit him with one or two shots so he can land something big back. He obviously doesn't have a lot of power, around 50% KO percentage, something like that, less than, I think. So he obviously doesn't have trust in his ability to stay in the pocket and fight with other great fighters. He doesn't. So he has to fight super negative in order to stay in fights with superior opposition. The problem with that is who the hell wants to watch that? I said it after the fight. I don't care who won this. I said it before the scorecards. I don't care who won this fight. I wish there was a way to give both fighters an L. I wish there was a way for both fighters to lose this fight. Just give them both an L. And I wake up the next morning and I see dudes on Twitter. I'm like, dude, you guys need to reevaluate where you are in your life. If you're out there arguing on who won that fight, who the hell cares? I'm trying to forget. I wish these Men in Black dudes would come with that thing and erase my memory that I even watched that. I felt bad that I even stayed up for that 12 rounds. I felt bad that I even stuck around for the scorecards and watched that stupid post-fight interview. For the people out there saying, Jermaine Ortiz, I told you, guy, I told you he could have won the fight, and I told you. I never want to see him do it again. You want him to fight, bury him deep on an undercard, have him fight non-televised fights until he proves that he can entertain somebody. Because that was atrocious. And there is no more room for negative fighters, fellas. You new age boxing fans, you need to get this. The market is about to go into a deep reset. I'm just warning you. There is about to be a deep reset, deeper than I thought coming into the year. And these dudes better find a way to entertain and get eyeballs attracted to them organically because they got a rude awakening coming. If you think that you can run around the ring for 12 rounds, and people are going to get on here. Dude, I got news for you. I said after the Zorilla fight, Prograis, I said after the Shakur De Los Santos, there is no way in hell I'll get on here and argue that this fighter won that fight when he's throwing 20 to 30 punches per round, 35 punches per round, not sitting on any of them. And CompuBox, dude, I'm pretty much done with CompuBox. And look, all due respect, there's some good people working over there. And you know, we can still use it as far as certain stats. But CompuBox is trying to tell me that they landed 126 power punches on Thursday night. I'll ask you guys in the chat, did y'all see 126 power punches landed between Ortiz and Teofimo? I didn't even see close to that. I saw maybe a handful of meaningful shots landed. So what in the hell are they constituting a power punch? If they're saying 100, what in the world, what galaxy were 126 punches landed on Thursday night? Because it wasn't this one. 126 power punches were landed between Ortiz and Teofimo. I see that. I see CompuBox spit that out. And I say, man, like, we might as well print that CompuBox sheet out and wipe our butts with it. if that's what they're trying to tell us. 126 power punches landed between Teofimo and Jermaine. In what galaxy? In what world did that happen? It didn't. It didn't. So for the people out there whining because Jermaine didn't get the decision and, well, Teofimo didn't throw a lot of punches either. How's he going to set his... Shout out to Steve Kim. And I'm going to cite him a couple times in this show. Let me get a link up real quick. I'm going to present this. This is Steve Kim, who, in my opinion, best in the business, because we talk about not only activity with fighters, but activity with writers, and write stuff every Friday and Monday. And on top of that, I'm going to get to these comments too as well. Let me take this comment down and I'm going to get the article up. This is from Steve Kim, snack.com. Let's see, present. And he put it the best after this fight, I believe. And he said, the story of the night, no winners here. And this is the article up here. Let me see if y'all have it. And y'all do. I think y'all do. Let me see. No winners here. And it might not be able to, it might be blocking it. I might not be able to put up the article. Let me see. So this might be an L. I might not be able to do this. Let me see. So yeah, it's going to be an L. It's not going to be able, it's not allowing me, it's blocking the article. But anyway, in the article, he says there's no winners. And there's no winners because one guy, the story of the night was, sum it up in one sentence. The pull quote is, one guy couldn't and one guy wouldn't. Is Ortiz wouldn't. And to me, that's worse, right? Because you're just refusing to give us what we want. It's already bad enough, fellas, that we got dudes just destroying the Marcus Queensberry rules right in front of us and constantly clinching and constantly boxing. And new age boxing fans are trying to pass this off as great boxing and great boxing ability and all-time great boxers, right? And it's just not. You got guys refusing to keep their hands free and fight on the inside. There's no more inside fighting. It's already bad enough you got that, but then you got a guy just running around the ring. And you got people trying to tell you that this is great boxing, and it's not. This is awful. This is awful. Who in the hell is going to want to watch this? And I felt bad once again because I'm telling my brother who's a UFC fan, just watch tonight. Because I had a feeling like Teofimo was going to show out. You have a great fighter fighting tonight, and it just didn't happen because one guy couldn't. We talked about how Inoue could. Inoue fights Paul Butler, and Paul Butler wouldn't. Paul Butler's just exchanging that belt for a payday, right? And he's going in there just trying to survive and not get his head taken off. And he's running around the ring, but Inoue figures out a way because he can. And that's the separation we talked about. Inoue separates himself from the pack because he can. When guys are fighting super negative, he still figures out a way. Teofimo couldn't. Ortiz wouldn't. Teofimo couldn't. He couldn't cut off the ring properly. And that's where it cuts deeper than I've been chalking it up as Teofimo fights up to level of competition, down to level of competition. But over time, you start to see that there are clear flaws in his game that aren't being addressed. They're not being addressed by his camp. It's constant inconsistency that's not working itself out both outside and inside the ring. When you see these post-fight interviews of him saying, "S my D," and then Jesus is king right after that. It's just constant inconsistencies. And it's bleeding into the ring. And you see a guy who every once in a while in fights like this, he can put it together and show flashes, and then he goes back to follow. He can't set his feet. He can't slow Ortiz down. He can't go to the body and slow him down. You can't get the jab working. And he just simply can't cut off the ring. He couldn't. And when you see top 10 level guys pound for pound, right? Special generational guys, you should be able to see stuff like that. And back in the days of the 90s, you would see a fight like this and you say, all right, that's just a one-off and we'll see him again in 4 to 6 months. But that's not the case anymore. Instead, we get, I'm retiring. And then you get constant Twitter flare-ups between fighters with nothing happening in between. And then maybe a year from now, you see him back in the ring. That's what you get now. So you say these off nights are magnified even more. You can't afford them anymore. If you're fighting so seldom and you're charging us more money to see you fight, you can't afford these off nights. And these American boxers continue to let us down. I was thinking about this, like, who would we consider right now like a great American fighter, like a great American fighter? It's Bud. We know that. We know Bud. But, I mean, is Devin the closest thing to that? Tank's a novelty fighter. And he'll be fighting another novelty fight, I believe, this summer, from what I'm gathering. He's certainly not fighting a top guy at 135 or 140. That much I know. I think it's going to be a novelty fight because they have to think outside the box. Shakur continues to put on lackluster performances. We can see that he's great. But as Steve Kim alludes to in this article, fellas, they don't fight enough in order to put anything together. There's no consistency. There's no pattern of behavior that leads to something. So that's another thing with Teofimo. And it's another thing with Shakur, is people aren't pinpointing this. It's these guys don't have an identity. This isn't leading to anything to get people emotionally invested in them organically. Everything's just artificially built now. I'm watching the Super Bowl and I see Taylor Swift. She's clearly artificially built up. Clearly. I'm not saying she's not talented, but she's not that talented. And I see a girl sitting next to her called Ice Spice, and she's got one of the top songs in the country, and it's called something about fart. The song is called something about fart. And I'm saying, clearly we have a product and a culture, like American culture, with everything now, not just sports. I watch the NBA, like I say, and there's no defense. It's just not leading to anything. It's not getting anybody emotionally invested in it. It's not hitting the soul. And I watch these guys fight, and I watch these guys put on these performances, and Teofimo doesn't have an identity. His identity is he's inconsistent. That's his identity. Shakur's identity right now, perception is everything. Whether this is the truth or not, fellas, their identity is one guy is inconsistent, one guy is boring. Back-to-back Thursday night top-ranked cards where they both put us to sleep. And Teofimo is too talented to be putting people to sleep. He's too entertaining to be putting people to sleep, but he's doing it. This guy should be so, like, and it's what Steve Kim points out in the article. You had guys like Cotto, you had guys like De La Hoya. They were fighting 3, 4, sometimes even 5 times per year, just building up that way from the ground up. Certain regional areas in particular, Cotto with Madison Square Garden, to where he's selling out Madison Square Garden. Teofimo can't even get to the big room. He's in the small room. And this is what they're trying to pass off as greatness these days. And it's sad to watch. It's sad to watch. But a lot of it is, hopefully it lets me show you this article. Let's see. Let's try with this one. And this is, I believe is this Boxing Scene? I think it's Boxing Scene. Let me try this first. Hold on one second. Let's see. Let me try to get this article up. Maybe it'll work this way. Okay. Let's try it. Let's get that out the way. Present. Share screen. And I think it's sharing it now. But let me see. Okay, it is. All right, so this is Boots Ennis. Boots Ennis files lawsuit against Now Boxing seeking release and judgment in excess of $1 million. So 7-figure lawsuit from Boots Ennis. Boots Ennis is locked in for his next fight, says Boxing Scene. Jake Donovan. Unfortunately for the unbeaten IBF titleist, it will take court in the ring. And I'm not going to read this whole article, but what you have to take from it is the heart of the complaint is focused on Ennis' gross inactivity in relation to the number of bouts promised from a signed agreement he entered into in 2019 with Now Boxing, his promoter. It's a 4-year agreement, and it called for Ennis to fight 4 times each year, 1 and 2 of the agreement, and 3 times each year in years 3 and 4. Ennis instead has just fought 10 times in more than 5 years since he signed with Now Boxing, which was previously run by Cameron Duncan prior to his passing earlier this year. The company is now run by Kelly Duncan, Cameron's widow, whom Ennis and his legal team cite as not having experience in that realm. So, who does this sound like, fellas? Who has told you that Boots Ennis is being grossly both mispromoted and mismanaged? Who has been telling you that? And who has been called repeatedly a racist, Hitler, worse? Some dude called me a pedophile for criticizing certain guys and how their careers have been run and locking themselves into terrible, terrible, terrible long-term deals. And Benavidez is another guy we're going to talk about, maybe starting today, but definitely tomorrow, who inexplicably, in my opinion, instead of going to free agency, signed an extension, multi-year extension, if you ask Sampson, with the PBC and Sampson, when he could have fielded offers. And this could come back to bite him. But Boots Ennis in particular, I've been saying, why in the world? This is chronic mismanagement and chronic mispromotion. Why in the world is this guy? It's been 6 years since he's fought. He's a Philly fighter, and it's been 6 years since he fought in Pennsylvania. And not only that, they're burying him constantly on undercards. And on top of that, Boozy Ennis, his father, has said, we have no contract with Showtime, but we're going to keep loyalty to Showtime. And the problem with that is he's not a PBC fighter, so he can only fight PBC guys for the most part. He becomes a PBC independent contractor at that point. And he's not fighting enough. And when you point this stuff out, the Boots Ennis clique, like it's small, but it's growing now since Errol Spence was sent to hell. So all those Errol Spence fanboys have gone over to Boots Ennis. They've gone over there now. And when you point this stuff out, they're saying, what do you know? These guys are brilliant. They're 8D chess. You're just a boxing fan sitting on the side. Like, how do you know? They're brilliantly running this guy. And why don't you go over there and criticize Dimitri Bivol? And I am criticizing Dimitri Bivol and how his career has been run up until this point. I am. I'm doing that too. We can multitask. And they're trying to accuse you of racism and all kind of stuff for pointing out the obvious. Why isn't this guy fighting more? So, shocking to me, the last hour I pull up this article and I read it and Boots Ennis agrees with me. Who would have thought? I've been saying Boots Ennis, bad deal. He's in a bad deal. From everything you read, everything you see publicly, his career is being chronically mismanaged and mispromoted. And he's now suing his promoter, and he agrees. He's not fighting enough. He's not active enough. He's not building an organic base. He's not fighting where he belongs. He's buried on undercards. We've been saying this for years, and we've been called all kind of names for it, but it's so obvious. Don't let your eyes... Look, fellas, trust your eyes. Trust your instincts. Don't listen to these dudes online and these power brokers telling you that they're playing 8D chess and they know better than you. And they're running these guys. There's a reason that we got to do it this way and that way. There's a reason that you just don't know. No, it's chronic mismanagement, chronic mispromotion. And it's sad. Why is it sad? Because Boots Ennis has a ton of talent. A ton of talent, fellas. You see these guys, they all have a ton of talent. The talent is still there. You see Top Rank's young roster, the talent is still there. We're still spitting out talent. But as we've been saying, there's something broken from the prospect level up to the elite level. Something is broken there. It's broken. And it's not allowing these guys to develop to become stars in America, superstars in America, and maximize their talent. It's not allowing it to happen. We say the same thing in basketball all the time. And I'm training these young kids. I'm coaching these young kids in basketball in the area. And every high school coach I talk to is saying they're doing it wrong. Everybody's doing it wrong. Everybody's doing it. It's broken. The system is now broken, and the game is now broken. They've taken all the physicality and balance off of the game, out of the game. These kids are more athletic than ever, but they're not better basketball players. And the same thing with boxing. They're more athletic than ever. They've got more tools than ever, high-tech stuff, but they're not better boxers. They continue to prove that to us. And it has to do with a lot of this stuff. Boots Ennis, supremely talented fighter. We all see it. Tank, supremely talented fighter. We all see it. We all see Teofimo. We all see Shakur, but these guys continue to let us down. Tank continues to let us down. He's a novelty fighter. And part of it is us. Part of it is publications letting these guys off the hook and putting them on pound for pound lists for not doing anything. So our standards have lowered, but the game has beat us down. The sport has beat us down. The business side of this has beat us down. None of these guys are on a trajectory to become all-time greats. None of them. None of them even on a trajectory to become generational greats. They're all talented guys who are just existing and waiting for stuff to fall in their lap. Send me this email belt while I hold my position. Boots, email belt. Tank, email belt. Shakur, vacant belt. Then he fights with one arm and puts everybody to sleep. Teofimo, once again, puts everybody to sleep. And if you listen to the Steve Kims of the world, guys who have been covering this sport for 3 decades, they'll tell you. And I've talked to Steve about this. And Steve told me, I just take it for what it is now. You hear him, this interview he had with Coach Malachi over the weekend in Vegas is beautiful. If you go to Coach Malachi's channel, True Media, what he'll tell you in this interview, with Coach Malachi is what he's told me, and his conversations with Dougie Fisher is they basically say, I've already conceded the point that I've already watched the best boxing that I'll ever watch a generation ago, 2 generations ago, depending on what you consider a generation. And I'm just going to take it for what it is now. And I've had conversations with Steve about this, the same thing. I'll say, I'm just going to be entertained by it, but take it for what it is. Hopefully we get great fights in between. Hopefully we produce a great fighter here and there. But our best boxing watching days are behind us. That's what we need to be honest about, fellas. It is broken. It's not going to get fixed. It's not going to die. It's going to be around in some form. But our best boxing watching days are behind us. That doesn't mean that we can't produce great fights. Look, we got Devin Haney versus Ryan Garcia. But let's take that for what it is, too. And we got to give Ryan Garcia credit. Ryan Garcia is fighting Tank and Devin in a 3-fight span. Good for him. Good for him. And that's a year span. Within 12 months, he fights both of those guys. Good for him. You got to give him credit, despite if you like him or not. But the truth of the matter is that's likely a mismatch. It's likely a gross mismatch. And Devin Haney, until Ryan proves otherwise, Devin Haney has proven that he can win some big fights, and Ryan hasn't. Stylistically, that's likely a mismatch. There's likely levels between those two guys as far as boxing ability. Not athletic ability, not explosiveness, because you could argue that Ryan's more explosive and athletic than Devin Haney, but boxing ability, there's a huge gap. And I think that's going to come out on April 20th. And we'll likely get a wide margin between those two guys. And that's going to be the problem with Ryan Garcia is, and once again, it's why these guys can't connect with the market, is there are guys who are willing to fight the fights, but they don't necessarily have the talent level of some of these other guys. And we haven't had a guy come around who has the talent, entertainment level that we have emotional investment in, who's also going to give us the fights, other than like a Canelo and an Inoue. Anthony Joshua over across the pond. But as far as an American fighter, who's going to be that guy? Tank's got talent. He's got entertainment level, but he's a novelty fighter. We talked about it. Who's going to be the guy? It's right there. The vacuum is there. That position is right there for somebody to come along and grab, and nobody is willing to do it. And when you say these fighters are mispromoted, mismanaged, like a Boots Ennis, you're called all kind of names for it. So why even try to call it out? I'm just trying to tell you what's going on. And this is part of the that episode with Coach Malachi over the weekend. Him and Steve Kim were talking about this on his channel. And when you get time, go watch this interview. It's about 50 minutes long, but this is a clip from it. This is Steve Kim talking about Rolly Romero. Listen to this.
What is Rolly thinking? Why is Rolly taking less money with no guarantee on a platform that's very unproven? To me, this looks like a JV matchup, and it's all about platform protection. That the PBC/Al Haymon simply was not going to allow Rolly Romero go to the other side of the street to take a much bigger fight in terms of profile against Ryan Garcia, even at the own detriment of his client, who's probably going to make less money, right? Because they want to keep it in-house. What is Rolly thinking?
Did y'all catch that?
Rolly taking less money with no...
It didn't come through on my headphones. It came through on my laptop, so hopefully y'all got that. But I want y'all to also look at this. Let me see. Let me try to pull this up, the comment section underneath this video. And this is from our guy, Jules, over at Ring IQ. Shout out to him. Sharp dude. I'm just shouting out the sharp dudes out there like him, like Coach Malachi, who seem to be able to read the forest through the trees. But his comment right here, perfect comment. Textbook conflict of interest, which accents why an advisor/manager can't also act as a promoter, which we all know Al Haymon does, by the way. The manager advisor is supposed to help get the fighter the best deal, even if it's somewhere else. The promoter is focused on himself and his platform broadcaster. So do y'all catch what he's saying here? He's saying what we've been saying and why Al Haymon can't come out and do interviews and why the PBC model, by its very nature, cannot work. It cannot work because you need a promoter who promotes. You need a promoter who comes out and gives interviews. And Al cannot do that. And he's working behind the scenes as we know this is happening. You had Thomas Houses of the world. You had the Steve Kims of the world, the Dougie Fishers of the world, rub the PBC the wrong way. And they no longer have access to this outlet because they've tried to call it out. All while being demonized by other media members, by the way, that this guy is working as both behind the scenes. It's a conflict of interest. It's the Muhammad Ali Act being broken. And he's able to get by on it through loopholes, right? But it's the reason he has Steven Espinoza when Steven Espinoza was at Showtime and Al was working with Showtime, working as what I call his press secretary. And it's why you have this puppet promoter who was there for the Keith Thurman, Tim Tszyu thing, who has this guy has no promotional skill, but he's just standing up there because he has to be up there, but he's not promoting either. It's why the PBC model cannot work. But Steve here is saying what I was saying when this card was announced. And when D-Style first told me about this, he's like, yeah, he's going to fight. It's going to be Tim Tszyu versus Keith Thurman. I was like, Tim Tszyu versus Keith Thurman. All right. So what's the main event? He's like, you don't understand. That's the main event. I was like, get the hell out of here. That's the main event? No, it's not the main event. It can't be. It can't be the main event. And once again, what I'm saying is even going into this year, I'm giving the PBC too much credit. Because D-Style's telling me, Calix, you don't understand. Like, they're just limping along. They probably think that Keith Thurman's still a big name and can sell a pay-per-view. And it's like, there's no way. There's no way. But I watch Raleigh's do this thing where he swerves Ryan Garcia in a Ryan Garcia pay-per-view and makes Ryan look bad and have to come back to the table to fight Devin Haney again for April 20th. But he swerves Ryan Garcia in a pay-per-view main event that would have been on DAZN in favor of fighting Isaac Cruz on the undercard of Keith Thurman versus Tim Tszyu. And you hear Raleigh's talk, and it's clear that Raleigh's, we've talked about this, he's a short bus character, and no offense to them, but it just shows you his mental capacity. He's just many, not a few, many French fries short of a Happy Meal. Many. And you hear him talk, and he's bragging about how he's going to have access to 200 million viewers on Amazon. And look, we got Amazon now, and Amazon's the greatest thing in the world. And you're listening to him. And you're like, this guy really listened to Al Heyman and the crew and swerved, and Leonard Ellerby in the crew and swerved Ryan Garcia pay-per-view main event to fight Isaac Cruz, which is arguably the more difficult fight, you can argue stylistically, for him, on the undercard of Keith Thurman versus Tim Tszyu. And you see the poor bastard sitting up there, clearly being used for what Steve Kim adequately and concisely tells you is what's called platform protection, is what it is. It's platform protection. We need as many fighters as possible strictly fighting on Amazon because it's our only platform, and we need to protect this platform. We need a certain amount of fighters to fill out this pay-per-view. We need a certain amount of fights that are sellable, if you want to call that sellable, in order to sell these events. And you see Raleigh out there. Raleigh, it's sad to see. You feel empathy because clearly the dude is slow. And he's up there thinking that this is a big event, all while poor Jimmy Lennon Jr. is up there too. And he's on a podium. The podium is way too small for him, and it's got all kind of dents and scratches on it. It looks like it's from the 14th century. And you're like, what in the hell is this? This is the saddest thing I've ever seen in my life. And it's sad because they've got their cult members out there, the Al Heyman cult members, the Heymanites as they're called, thinking that these dudes for years are out here playing 8D chess when they have a GoFundMe business model. And I'm telling you right now, fellas, if what I'm hearing on the back channels is true, oh boy, oh boy, we've got ourselves, we got ourselves some interesting times ahead as boxing fans. And for me, once again, I go back to what I was saying about 10 minutes ago from my conversation with Steve Kim and what he's saying. And he's saying, I'm just enjoying for I'm just going to find the entertainment value in the meltdowns that, because this stuff, when we're talking about here, if what I'm hearing happens or even close to it, we're going to see meltdowns that make the Spence meltdowns look like a field day. When Canelo announces his next fight, and let me just say this, dominoes, and look, this is what makes Canelo. And people say faces of boxing. There's no faces of boxing. There's one face of boxing, and I'll prove it right here, is when Canelo makes any sort of announcement, first of all, everybody melts down. All these dudes just melt down, but everybody reacts to it, either positively or negatively. He has that type of hold on people. But when he makes a fight announcement, it leads to a domino effect. But it doesn't just lead to a domino effect in his division. When we had Mayweather, we had Pacquiao, we had guys like that. It led to a domino effect like right around their division. When Canelo announces a fight, it's a domino effect from welterweight all the way up to, you can argue, cruiserweight. Because you got these guys waiting for a Canelo stimulus check to fall in their lap. And part of the reason is they understand that Canelo, when you fought Mayweather, you fought Pacquiao, you got what you got as the B-side. You got what you got. Canelo, these guys are getting career high paydays by far. So much that these dudes just disappear for a while. They just disappear. I'm telling you this right now, fellas. I don't make this. I'll just say this. I'm being careful about what I say, because if it doesn't come true, then it doesn't come true. We'll wait and see. But you're not going to see Mel this year. I'm going to make that prediction. I don't think you see Spence this year. And I think you need to start reading between the lines and seeing what each person, like different people, are doing and put things together. When you see Errol Spence have cataract surgery 6 months after his fight, you're like, what the hell is that? That doesn't make sense. Why would he do that? Maybe he thought he was going to fight. Maybe he thought there was going to be a rematch and I'll just wait to get the surgery after or something like that. When you see Bud sort of wait around, and then you start to see rumors that Bud is going out to Saudi again for the second straight year to try to secure some funding for a fight. And you hear things about Canelo possibly making an announcement on several fronts tomorrow. And then you see this press conference that's rolled out. First of all, you hear the actual fights and you're like, Keith Thurman? And Keith Thurman is first on the poster against Tim Tszyu. And look, I love Tim Tszyu as a fighter and I'm cheering for him, but he's not a headliner in America. You see that? And you see this press conference rolled out and it's not on Amazon. It's on a PBC YouTube channel. It's not on Amazon. And you see this podium that looks like it's from the 14th century and poor Jimmy Lennon Jr. is like leaning over. His back is all crunched up, trying to lean on the podium. Like, this does not add up. It doesn't add up. It doesn't add up. And then you hear that Benavidez's name isn't being mentioned for a possible Canelo fight, and you're like, wait a second. That doesn't jive with the track record. That Benavidez wouldn't be in the plans for 2024, possibly. Why is this happening? Why is this happening? You start to put those things together. It starts to give you a clear picture of what could possibly be going on behind the scenes. And if that stuff is going on behind the scenes, then we're going to have a harder reset than I thought. I thought we were going to see a soft reset. D-Style and Beeb, to their credit, thought we were going to see a harder reset. And that was going to be pain for a lot of these fighters. And I'll go back to what I said, and we'll do shows on this because I just have a feeling in the next couple of weeks we're going to have a lot of fun shows on this stuff. It's just the feeling I get. It's what my instincts tell me. And I could be wrong. But I'll go back to this. The fighters who are signing their lives away on the front end just for some easy money that they may or may not get, because now fighters are going to having to go to court because they're not getting what they were promised that they were going to get. It's the fighters that we've been highlighting here. We've highlighted Tim Tszyu. We've highlighted Callum Walsh, who I don't think is all that talented, to be honest, but they're at least maneuvering him the right way. They're keeping him free. They're giving him fight dates. They're keeping him active. Tim Tszyu, the same thing. Those fighters are positioned correctly to where even if they lose fights, at least they're entertaining. At least they're building an organic base. But these fighters who are locked into bad deals, these fighters who are locking themselves into multi-year deals and signing their lives away, signing their freedom away, they're not going to have a fun time in this market. They're not. The fighters who are free, they're going to have fun in this market, especially if they're talented or entertaining. They're going to be fine. But the ones who are not free, they're in for some rough times. And once again, I was called all kind of names for this at the time, and we'll see what happens. But when David Benavidez signed a multi-year deal with the PBC and Sampson, both of them, and that's according to Sampson in his articles with his interviews with ProBox TV last year, multi-year deal, several years, according to him, longer than 3 or 4 fights, according to him. And that's all I can go off of. I was saying at the time, why? Does he not have confidence and trust in himself to go to the free agency market and do what a Devin Haney's doing, just going 2-fight deal after 2-fight deal? And I'll go over here, work ESPN. I'll go over here, work with DAZN. I'll work with Eddie. I'll work with Bob. Why not just keep yourself free if you have trust in yourself? But fighters are going after these minimums, and these are the type of deals that can and moves that can hinder these fighters. We saw it with Boots Ennis, right? And Boots Ennis might be locked up with lawyer stuff going on instead of being in the ring. Because when's the last time Boots fought? Has it been 7 months? Something like that? Any type of momentum these guys get, good performance, great performance, actually. And he finally has a main event and is packed in that little theater. And we got something going, right? And he's emailed the belt. Okay, we got something. Let's see what happens. And then this. A fighter does something and then he retires and then unretires. What is this? But you see even a David Benavidez who seems to have talent and is marketable, and they're locking themselves into these deals. At the time, I'm saying Canelo's over there, and that's the fight that you want. And everything, Benavidez's whole thing that they promoted him and marketed him on is Canelo. Attach him to Canelo, attach him to Canelo, attach him to Canelo. He could have been a star already without Canelo. If he was moved right. And you say this stuff, and people call you dumb, but it's common sense. But Canelo's over here, and he says, it's clear, I'd rather work with Eddie than anybody else. And these dudes are out there saying stuff like, the Charlo brothers, Jamal Charlo's a tougher fight than Dimitri Bivol. And you're like, what? Dude, the Charlo brothers are not a tougher fight than John Ryder. I got news for you. Those were always easy fights for Canelo. And Canelo's sitting back looking at it like, the Charlo brothers? Boo Boo Andre? Really? That's who you think I'm afraid of? So finally he says, all right, I'll go beat up on the PBC dudes. It's fine, whatever. But he had the freedom to go in different directions. Benavidez wants the Canelo fight, and it's why D-Style was asking these questions of people when Canelo signed with PBC. Or before Canelo signed with PBC, my bad. And he said, look, Benavidez signed with PBC, another multi-year deal, whatever. Doesn't seem smart, but whatever. Would you be willing, if Canelo wants to stay with Eddie and DAZN, if he'd rather do that, which he's entitled to as the A side, it's what we've been told, we're just going by everybody else's rules. I'm not saying he should do this. Just saying, would Benavidez be willing to go to DAZN to fight that fight? And the answer is no. Like, how is the answer no? How are you answering no right there? The answer should be, I'll go anywhere, whatever. And it's platform protection. And they were protecting Benavidez for a platform that no longer exists. No longer exists. All these people saying you're not doing it if you're not on Showtime, and Showtime no longer exists. Amazon is the greatest app ever built, 200 million people. And for boxing, who knows, man? Who knows how long that's going to last? Protecting fight, and you're allowing yourself to be used for platform protection. And you're not sitting around and asking questions like, why aren't they looking out for my better interests? Like, I have fighters under my own platform, own talent that I can't get at currently. Why? Why is that not? Why? They have to be asking themselves these questions. They have to be. They have to be. But I saw Benavidez sign that multi-year extension. I saw it announced on Boxing Voice. And I was saying, why? Why? Just is what it is, man. Like, I don't know. I don't know what to say at this point. But what I do know is the fighters like Sabriel Matias going over to Earn with Hearn, and he's exercising his right to move and go somewhere else. And the good thing about moves like this, and we talked about it with Regis Prograis when he left, when he was fielding deals, and he said everybody was calling him dumb at the time, and I was saying smarter deal. And they just call me a homer, but I'm saying, why would you lock yourself into long-term deals? The top ranked deal was almost twice as long as the Matchroom deal. And they weren't guaranteeing him dates or opponents. Eddie guaranteed him 3 fights within a 13-month period. That was the guarantee. I'm guaranteeing you your dates. You get a hometown fight first, and you get a big fight second. And then third fight will go from there. We'll see what that is. But he's guaranteeing him dates and activity. Those are the fighters who are going to win in this market. And for Prograis, he's older. He had an ugly loss and an ugly performance before then, so he might be done. And that's the danger of it, right? Is you don't look good in these fights, then the market's not going to react well to you. And you might not get your guaranteed minimums for a long period of time. But the fighters who are taking bets on themselves, the fighters who are keeping themselves free and getting their activity and getting their dates, those are the ones that are going to win in this market. That's the positive of this market that we're about to see. Is the Saudis are going to give us our 6 big events per year. So every other month, you're going to get a big event from them. The American promoters are still going to give us some big fights here and there. And this new market, these fighters are going to have to generate revenue. They're going to have to, or the big deals are not going to be there. It's going to look more like a real market. And that may lead us to some better fighters, better talent, realizing its potential. I don't know. We'll see, but I'll be here tomorrow. It's Mardi Gras, but I don't, if I do the Mardi Gras thing, it's not going to be for long. I have a feeling big news will drop tomorrow on the Canelo front. He's announcing he's having some sort of press conference, so we'll see how that goes. And I have a feeling that other big news will drop the next couple of weeks, and we'll be here for it, as we always are. And we'll try to navigate it together and see how the landscape is going to look. But, you know, to sum up today, sort of wrap it up, these fighters cannot have off nights, fellas, in this market. You can't fight sparingly, and you can't make yourself less accessible and then come out and stink the joint up. You can't. The market's not going to forget that. Especially when there's a ton of things going on in the sports world on any given night that they can watch. This isn't the old days. And it certainly isn't 30 years ago when fighters were fighting more often. They were more accessible. You didn't have to pay all that much money to see these fighters. They were fighting where it made sense, more so, more often, regionally. So they could have off nights and then come back 3 to 6 months later, and it was fine. It's forgivable. Now you can't do that. You can't win a big fight, retire, give all kind of weird press conferences and interviews, and demand all kind of crazy things, speak out both sides of your mouth, and then stink it out again. Just like you did against Sandor and Kambosos. You can't do it. Same thing with Shakur. You can't stink it out against De Los Santos at midnight, 1 a.m. on a Friday a.m. and expect people to get invested in you. Like, you can't do it. They need to put this math together. You can't do it. You need to entertain. It's not just about winning. You need to entertain. And you certainly, because the power brokers already do it, and it's bleeding down to the fighters. You cannot talk down to the audience. You cannot, when people are rightfully booing you because you put on a terrible performance and you wasted everybody's time and money, say, S my D. S my D. Humans, like talking down to people. What is this? You can't do it. Can't do it. Somebody needs to tell them that. See y'all tomorrow. God bless. Peace.